On Anzac Day, we remember and honour the service and sacrifice of those who have served our nation. We do this for a number of reasons: to acknowledge those who have died in service to our nation, to reflect on how that service and sacrifice has contributed to what and who we are as a nation today, that is, to understand its impact, and to understand what our response should be to that legacy. Today, on an Anzac Day that is so different to what we are used to, this last point is particularly important. We are proud of the Anzac legacy. We celebrate it and we identify with it. Now, as our generation faces its greatest test, it is time to demonstrate that that legacy is a true representation of who we are. On the 25th of April 1915, the world changed. As young men and women of that generation joined the services in increasingly large numbers, our nation experienced loss at a disproportionately larger rate than other countries. Australia suffered the highest death and wounding rate per capita. This loss devastated our cities and towns. It disrupted the social fabric of Australia. But from that devastation grew an Australian identity that has guided and in many respects defined our national character.
The most decorated of all units in the land. 1 BC, 3 MCs.
We are reminded today, as we commemorate our losses in World War II, a war that ended 75 years ago, that national character was evident again when Australia responded to the threat of totalitarianism and fascism. And in more recent decades, our service and sacrifice has continued in operations around the globe. Each has had its impact on our returned servicemen and servicewomen, and reminds us that our duty to our veterans never ceases. We now talk of the Anzac legacy as having 4 characteristics that define Australia: mateship, endurance, courage and sacrifice. In essence, these characteristics say that we are a people who, in adverse situations, are strong, look out for each other and are prepared to put others before self. A fine example of this was the action of the crew of HMAS Encounter during the RAN's first overseas humanitarian mission to Tonga and Samoa in 1919. The response to the captain's request for volunteers to provide assistance ashore to treat those suffering the Spanish flu was overwhelmingly positive. It would be difficult to find a more telling example of the Australian Navy's tradition of service before self. Today, the Anzac legacy should serve 3 purposes: to call on us to thank those earlier generations for their sacrifice, to energise us in looking after our more recent veterans, and to inform us of what those earlier generations would expect of us today as we face our own generational test. We remember on Anzac Day for a reason. We are proud of our Anzac forebears. Let us make them proud of us, lest we forget.